Tractor Tour Part 1, the working Olivers. These are the ones that have been here originally or brought here to work and have been in service continually since they've been here. I enjoy the stories of the old equipment. A few guys on YouTube tell their stories. I find it interesting. I've wanted to do the same thing. And this first quarter next winter, we're supposed to have a story in the Hart-Parr Oliver Collectors Association. That's the national collectors, a little right up on our farm. So it's kind of spurred me on to tell some stories, how we got started, how these ended up here, and why this brand. Well, the story here begins with horses, like most century farms. They were your means of pulling implements and doing work. And as things progressed, tractors started to become available. But like a lot of farmers, they didn't have money. They couldn't just go buy new equipment. So from there came the first homemade tractor. A lot of people refer to them as doodlebugs. Most of them that you see around at thrashing shows and stuff were made of from Model A's and Model T Fords. The one here from this picture from 1940 was built from an old Dodge Brothers car. And that was the first tractor on this farm. I'm not sure how many years that was around. Shortly after there, sometime in the 40s, they'd got their first tractor. It was an Untitled John Deere A. Here's a picture of my great-grandpa putting loose hay up with it. Put another picture up here of my grandpa and his brother-in-law. I'm not sure if he was his brother-in-law at the time. It might have just been his friend still, standing in front of that same John Deere. So that they ran in the 40s. The story from there goes, the neighboring farm, which happened to be his cousin, was originally his uncle's. His dad, the brothers, had farms next to each other, and his cousin had got a new Super 77 Oliver. So I'm not sure if he just went over and test drove it or he actually borrowed it to do a little field work. But after getting off old unstyled John Deere and running smooth running inline 6, foot clutch, hydraulics, all that stuff, he was convinced that was going to be the path to try it out. So Supers they started in 1954, and the fleet lines here, the original row crops, they ran up through 1954. So I'm guessing it had to have been 1954 when that happened. And then he went and bought his first new tractor, the only tractor he ever bought brand new, and it happens to be this 1953 Oliver row crop 77. This was his favorite. This tractor has been here since the beginning. So I'm guessing he bought it 1 year old in 1954, and this is a 53 model. It has hydraulics, live PTO, all things that were pretty cutting edge for the early 50s. It also had a belt pulley on it. So it kind of had the best of everything for the time. These were manufactured from 1948 through 1954. Came with a 193 cubic inch or a 3.2 liter inline 6. Very smooth motor. They were rated at a belt horsepower of 37, drawbar of 32. It cost $3,000 brand new in 1954. I'm guessing depending on the upgrades. This became the main workhorse on this farm for many years, doing loader work, baling, custom work, custom baling, many hours put on this thing. It's been in service continuously since 1954. Here in the later years, it still works, but not nearly to the extent it used to. We've gotten smaller and we've got more tractors, so it does some of the lighter jobs, but it hasn't missed a season. I'd hate to guess how many hours are on it. I believe I was told the original hour meter quit in the early 80s at 16,000. So up until about 5 years ago, that's when this thing received its first major overhaul, where he had to have the crank ground, cam ground. The governor had actually wore out and fell apart and got in there and busted some of the cam gears. But up until that point, it was tore down like an in-frame in the 70s to have oversized pistons put in the M&W kit. He wanted a little more power out of it, ended up putting 15 538s on, bumping the horsepower up a little bit just because he wanted a little more out of it, and it helped. My grandpa always took pride in his machinery, just like his cars. This was no different. Again, look at the sheet metal on this, is all original. It's been repainted, obviously, but there's no holes in it. You can see he added a hood ornament. He used to laugh and said that kept his row straight when he was planting corn. No torch marks. You know how some of the farm equipment gets a reputation for taking a shortcut or just welding stuff up. There wasn't any of that kind of abuse on these machines. That being said, it was not immune from getting some farmer fixes, and one of them, or I should say modifications, one of them was he never liked how far the brakes stuck out, so those have been cut and re-welded just because of, you know, operator comfort. Just needs a touch up on some paint, but this was the one that started it all. Continued to be the favorite through all the years, and it has been an extremely reliable machine. The original 6-volt system too, never changed over to 12. Worked all these years. Next up, another Oliver Row Crop 77. This is a 54 model. This came to the farm in the early 70s as a mounted picker tractor. It's had a 2-row Oliver picker on it that was used, I believe, up until the mid-90s. By that time, we already had a pull type, new idea, which did a better job. You could go faster, and this one wasn't used that much, more just to open the fields up. And so it was decided to pull the picker off and use this tractor, have another one around for running wagons. And so this one would be a pretty low hour tractor, because most of its life it only got ran, you know, in October. So as far as the gears, the governor, all those things that take wear, this one is pretty low hour. It has had an overhaul, probably from years of being, you know, they had a prone to overheating when you were picking, and then they sat and they weren't ran for a while, so they get dry, low on oil. So this got the same overhaul treatment. M&W, oversized pistons, or should I say power seal now, new bearings. This is missing a few options because it came out of the factory as a mounted picker one. Instead of having hydraulics, it had the lift that they used on cultivators, and it would lift the picker up and down. It also didn't have a flat pulley in it. So this was kind of a plain Jane, kind of the end of the last of the row crop model run. So this one did a lot of work on the bale wagon, you know, hauling gravity boxes, anything where you really didn't need a hydraulic cylinder, just basic chore work. And sometimes we'll antique tractor pull this one. For some reason it tends to do pretty well for being just a little overstock. Still a 6-volt. Got that distinctive Oliver whine. It's there no matter how many hours are on a tractor. Next up, a 1964 Oliver 770. This came to the farm in 1965. The story with this tractor was, it was bought for use on a potato farm in a more sandy region of our state, where it was bought to run the irrigation pump. but it was a little underpowered. So they didn't have it very long. They traded it in on something bigger. It ended up at our local John Deere dealer, and that's where my grandpa bought it. 770s were run from 1958 through 1967, but there's two variations of them. The later model, being these with the checkerboard grill, started in 1964, so this would have been the beginning run of the second style of these tractors. These tractors were so popular that they continued to make them through 67, even though the 3-digit stuff was gone by then, and they were into the 1600s, 1800s, the 100 series, and the 50 series. But I guess these were so successful that there was demand for them, they kept making them. These are real nice chore tractors, the second style especially. Power steering, flat top fenders. It's got the power booster drive, that 2-speed. So essentially making it a 12-speed tractor. You have 6 forward, 2 reverse. This doubles that to 12. Just overall a real easy tractor to operate, to get on and off. This one did basically green chopping every day for many years. Does a lot of the hay cutting. Does a lot of the, lighter work. Easy to get on and off. Very nice driving, very smooth running. It's been really good. It's been here in service every year since '65. We actually, when cleaning the farmhouse out, found an actual brochure for this style tractor, which is kind of cool. We'll look at this real quick and I'll actually read the power booster stats. A new look in power and economy, top value among 4-plow row crop tractors. Simple, trouble-free power booster. Consists of a single efficient gear housing with 3 gears and 2 clutches. When you shift into the PBD, the over-center clutch is disengaged. Power flows instantly through the gear train and overrunning clutch. This is a unit with practical speed reduction and power boost, not an overgeared device. Some people say these are weak and they've had problems with them. I think this evolved into the hydropower. This was like a dry 2-speed, but all the years in service, it's been rebuilt one time and has never failed. It's pretty nice to be able to pull that and when you come into a heavy load. New fully hydraulic power steering. Look at the stats here. Belt horsepower 51, drawbar 45, 216 cubic inch, compression ratio 7:3 to 1. One other story I'll share about this tractor goes back to the mid-70s. I think it was New Year's Day, maybe 74, 75. I wasn't around, so I've just heard the story. I have a couple pictures to insert. So for anybody who's not from this far north, you might think it's insane to drive on water, right? On ice, on lakes and ponds. Kind of is, but it's not uncommon up here, especially during ice fishing season. You would see, on local lakes, people driving trucks, huge fish houses. Even they clear some of the ice roads with deuces and a halves, just huge heavy equipment. So it was an unusually cold winter here, and I believe Grandpa wanted to go out and clear the pond so they could ice skate. He was going to do it the easy way with the loader on this tractor. Well, the tractor ended up breaking through the ice, and panic ensued, but they got her out, and it didn't drop any part of the motor end, just the back end dropped in, and they were able to chip it away and get it out. But interesting nonetheless. Got a few pictures, and that is really kind of uncharacteristic of my grandpa. He was very cautious. He'd never do anything that would be perceived as, you know, risky like that. So I guess they might not have known that it was a spring pond or the ice was weak, but I think it was, you know, 20 below for quite a while. So it's an interesting little side note. Tractor took a swim. Didn't hurt it though. Power booster works. We're in underdrive right now. Pick up a little speed, we push it ahead. You pull it back. Free wheels. Next up, a 1959 880 diesel. These have a 265 cubic inch Waukesha, rated at 55 PTO horsepower, 54 drawbar. They made these from 1958 through 1963. This one doesn't have a lot of history here. Kind of a late arrival in the grand scheme of things. It was picked up from a fellow Oliver Club member in about 2006. Originally the farm did have an 880 on it. That was a gas version some time back, I don't know, probably in the 60s, which got traded up into a 1650 and however the chain goes. So this was picked up to do, like, run the dryer and just have an extra tractor around. The diesels run pretty cheap. This one doesn't have power steering, doesn't have the power booster, has fluid on it, and has an aftermarket 3-point hitch. It's kind of heavy, a little cumbersome to run around. Used it quite a bit on the round baler over the years. Works pretty good, has pretty good power. They would have been $5,000 brand new in 1963, the final year of their production. Then I believe the next model these turned into was a 1600. Last on the working Oliver list is the 1555. This is a 75 model, or whatever the absolute latest ones are. When I looked up the serial numbers, it said final, and it was listed in that, but it's listed 75 as the last year manufacturer. This came to the farm somewhere in the mid 90s, maybe early 90s. I was pretty young. It replaced a John Deere 3020. There would only be one other John Deere on the farm since the beginning, and the 3020 was bought probably in the 70s or 60s because they actually had better hydraulics than the Olivers did of the same time period. It was like a short frame tractor, turned really short, worked well. So that was the loader tractor for many years and did a lot of field cultivating. And for some reason, I think about the same time we started getting skid loaders on the farm, Grandpa just couldn't let it go. He had to go get a meadow green one instead of the deer. So he sold that and bought this. These were made from 1969 through 1975, and these were the very last of the Oliver tractors made. White had already owned them for a number of years, and the 55 series was the end. This would have been the smallest one still made in Iowa, Charles City. Everything that was below a 1555 was like a Fiat. So this was the end before the white stuff came around. 232 cubic inch, 3.8 liter, inline six. PTO rating of 53 horsepower. You can tell quite a bit different on these later ones versus like the earlier ones. If you think about 770 being very similar in horsepower, like 50, and the 880 being even rated higher, these are quite a bit bigger framed. They had factory 3-point hitches on them. They had wet PTO clutches instead of dry disc. They were just moving ahead into the bigger stuff. It has 4,702 hours. Has the hydropower drive, 2-speed, tilt, steering, telescoping. I mean, they were moving right along with technology. Pretty comfortable operator's platform, but like for lighter chores, green chopping and running around, you can't get off the back of them. That's why some guys like the older, littler ones. If you remember back to the first tractor, talking about some of the farmer fixes or comfort items, you notice there's a little copper here. Grandpa extended that lever to be more ergonomic. Same thing with this shifter. Just a few little things you find interesting over the years. Would have been $6,500 brand new. Has the hydropower. This tractor would have been used back when people field cultivated. It was pulled a 4-row field cultivator and did a lot of square baling.